This is the Andre Segovia Show.
All right, we're rolling. Sam, welcome to the Andres Segovia Show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and for those that are tuning in, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do?
Okay, so Sam, I go by Sam Tabs on social media, and from California originally, which is where we met way back then,
Yeah.
and left the United States in 2013 and began a journey of traveling. And now we call Taiwan our home. What I did is I used to do a lot of online businesses before I was let go from my 12 years job that I used to have from a company based in San Diego,
Mm.
providing technology for school districts, mostly Apple Tech. And yeah, right now I'm just enjoying life. I'm not doing much. I'm just having fun doing, you know, videos here and there for YouTube of our travels. And I just venture out this year a little bit into podcasting after seeing you doing what you're doing.
Well, it's why not, right? It's like
Yeah,
you can,
exactly. Yeah.
and and you actually have a really good eye. I've seen some of your photography on Instagram. It's like, dude, where is he getting these shots? And I think I noticed that in a lot of cases you were using an iPhone for most of that.
Um, I've used iPhone 100% for everything.
Wow. So how much post touch ups are in that? Do you run it through like a Photoshop or something?
I use Lightroom for iPhone, and I
Hmm.
do like to have a specific aesthetic, I guess. So, and I like having my pictures in a particular color theme. So that's why I, run it through Lightroom so I can put my own color profile that I enjoy, doing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Th- No, that's awesome. Because uh, some of that stuff, I'm like, well, it's amazing what you can do with uh, smartphone cameras nowadays. That's why I'm
exactly.
like, dude, if you got a smartphone camera and you have the willingness to just talk into a camera, you can do podcasting or vlogging and things like that. That's actually the encouragement I got from a fellow content creator named Mr. Mobile. He used to be over on Pocket Now. For those that want to know his real name, his name is Michael Fisher. And
Oh,
we used to communicate back in the day in Twitter when it wasn't a mess. And when I asked him, I was like, "Hey, man, I'm actually really interested in getting into tech because back then, like I didn't like all these tech influencers. They were
right.
not giving BlackBerry its fair share. It's like it's not
Oh,
an Apple, it's not a Samsung. It's not trying to be.
yeah,
It's everybody that's been using one would know. So
right.
I asked him like any advice for someone like me, and he said, dude, I started off with a crappy webcam too, so you just have the willingness to do it, go for it. I'm like, well,
Right.
all right, I'll give it a shot. And that was September 2015 when I started
Wow.
YouTube. So yeah, it's been
Wow.
a while now, and I've come a long ways. So yeah,
Good.
and yeah, it's just amazing what you can do with it. But seriously, your aesthetic, do you ascribe to matte black everything because you have like a black aesthetic, right?
um, I guess so, but it's just there's something about just having that matte black, let's say, um, part of your theme, and then adding colors as you see fit based on your lifestyle, based on how you perceive those colors. And so I fell in love with this matte black thing after watching a few online videos and other creators. I'm going to drop a name really quick. I'm sure you know him, NKBHD.
Matte black
Uh,
everything. Yep,
yeah,
that's his phrase.
exactly. And I started looking at some of those things, and then I kind of, roll with the punch, and I adopted some of that into, I guess I can call my brand, and I've just enjoyed it. I mean, I like it. I think it's really cool.
Well, here's my follow-up question: what color is your iPhone?
Well, here's the thing. You see,
They don't have a black one, I know.
yeah, exactly. So for the past two iterations, right? For the
Mhm.
11 and the 12,
Mm,
I wanted to go with the new colors that
mhm,
came out. So for the 11, I went for the green
mm.
that was released. And then for the 12, I went for the blue. I forgot what
Pacific
was
Pacific
Pacific.
Blue, is that what they call it?
I
Something
think
like
that's
that.
the new one, the 13.
Oh.
I'm not entirely sure. But anyways, I went with that blue. And nowadays, to be honest with you, I hate putting cases on my phones. But then
Mhm.
again, we know how these iPhones are designed with this glass back. And if people are as clumsy as I am when it comes to holding phones, plus, I have 4 kids, so things get a little hectic here and there. Um, I didn't want to break these very expensive devices. These are
Oh
not
yeah.
cheap devices, as we know. And, anyways, so I end up getting that. I like to use, because I use iPhones pretty much for everything, including my, you know, YouTube videos as well as pictures. Sometimes I use interchangeable lenses.
Mhm.
And so I like to put a case on my iPhone. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it looks
Yeah, I
like
can see it.
this. And then it has a, lenses mount that I
Nice.
own. And then I can just mount them, and it's all black, so you barely see anything anyway. So yeah, no complaint there.
Yeah, no, and yeah, me too. I prefer having a naked phone. It's just,
Yeah,
well, life happens. Um,
exactly.
my most precious, device that I still have, um, and people that watch my show know this one. It's the HTC One M8 All Red.
Okay.
It was a
Oh
limited
wow.
edition only for Verizon at the time. This was the time when carriers were still making carrier specific colors. And me
Got
being
it.
on Verizon, I had access to it, but I had just renewed. Back then, we had contracts, right? So I had just renewed the contract for an HTC One M8, and it was the gunmetal color. And I
Oh
was
wow.
and I was at the in Costa Mesa. And they have a small Verizon there across the street of the South Coast Plaza, next to an Old Navy, and I just happened to be passing by there, and I remember I had to do something for the for my account, so I went in there and I happened to see that they had the poster of it, but I didn't see the phone itself. And at that point, the inventory was basically all run out because I did ask Verizon,
Wow.
a corporate, when I was on the phone with them before I renewed. It's like, hey, do you have any more red ones? Like, no, we're all out of the red ones. Like, okay.
Wow.
So then I was at this local store. It just didn't even occur to me because I had already renewed. I couldn't take it back. And then I asked them, it's like, man, that red one's nice. Do you guys even have the red ones anymore? Because they're like all out. And the store
Wow.
guy's like, yeah, we have one left. I'm like, dude, that could be
All
the
right.
last one on earth. I can't renew my contract. So 67 bucks right here. Give me that phone. I'll take it. That was the most like gut reaction I had to a phone. Imagine this 667 bucks back then. Now we're paying $1,200 for a phone, but I bought it. It was a unibody aluminum frame, and
Wow.
I told my wife, who was all Apple, I'm like, I feel like I have more Taiwanese pride than you do because my wife's Taiwanese, because I support HTC. She supports Apple. But I still have that phone to this day. And with Verizon devices, you can't unlock the bootloader. So you couldn't,
Oh really?
you yeah, so you couldn't flash another operating system to this thing. And even though I went to the developer settings of HTC developers at the time, you
Right.
couldn't get an unlock code to unlock the bootloader because Verizon is the one that locked it, or at least demanded that it be locked. But there's these
Wow.
cool guys online. Shout out to Root Ninja, for finding a way through something called Sunshine app, to be able to do a temporary root on the device. I'm like, I tried it before, it didn't work, and sometime I guess they eventually were able to update it to make it work on Verizon specific devices.
Uh-huh.
Now I have Lineage OS running on my HTC, so it's got more life. I'm like, dude, I can still use this phone. It's like 7 years later. It's my
Wow.
favorite Android of all. The runner up would be the Samsung, um, Galaxy Note 10 in red. So like, dude,
Wow.
I don't know what it is with me in red because I
Yeah, I
never
was
could
just
say one
gonna
of my
tell
favorite
you.
colors. But the thing is, when you see a red phone, because we're so conditioned to a black
Yep.
phone, that eventually
Yep.
remember when Apple
Yep.
announced iPhone 4 available in white, like, oh my gosh, let's get the white one. It was like,
Yep.
there's you mean we can have it any color we want so long as it's black, and then here comes Apple with white. So to me, HTC was always bold, like we can do it in different colors. But that was a long
Well,
time
the red
ago.
one from iPhone, um, the code red one, it's popular as well. It's not that everyone just want the black one. I just think that we have been conditioned, to think that way. And just to touch on something that you spoke about briefly about your wife, that's one thing that we have in common as well, right? Our wives are
Mhm.
Taiwanese. And then the other thing is that when you were talking about that she supports Apple, I can tell you, out of the very small group of people that I know here in Taiwan, the overwhelming majority of them use iPhones. And I think I know the reason, and that is because of TSMC, right? Um, TSMC is the largest SoC or chip manufacturer for the entire world. And they're the one that produces the iPhones, in China as well. So I guess there's some kind of pride in that, I guess. But yeah.
There was that, and I did have a gripe with HTC. This is
Uh-oh.
kind of similar to Samsung, because Samsung does have their own chipset. They use Exynos,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's an in-house chip that they build. And
Mm,
in the United States, they use Qualcomm. So you actually get a very different experience on your Samsung device if you're using an
right.
Exynos versus a Qualcomm chip. So the benchmarks come in, and
Oh,
it's not there's no competition there until I would say maybe this year the Exynos processor is like catching up. But in the case of HTC,
mhm,
they it's like they focused their energies in the American market and neglected the East Asian markets, and I think the European market is like somewhere in between.
got it.
So if they neglected their own people, I know of a lot of people that wanted to love the HTC phones because they like the colors, they like the interface that they could customize it.
Right.
They like the speakers because back then it was still like a mono firing speaker downward, uh, and iPhones were really expensive.
And it
But
still have the headphone jack as well,
and
right?
it still had the headphone jack, which is, oh man, that's a bygone day, isn't it? But everybody like, okay, I'll buy my HTC, but HTC have bloated user interfaces that were so wonky. They would never update their phones. They were
Oh, I see.
sluggish, and
Yeah.
it felt like unless they were buying the flagship models, which was maybe they'll update it, they
Mm,
had a poor track record with customer service. So the user experience really failed on that. And despite my anti-Apple stance for so long,
mhm,
and I
mhm.
had to adopt some Apple or iOS products into what I do because of real estate,
Right.
the the one thing that I always praised Apple for was just how long they will support a device with regular operating system updates. I mean,
Right.
heck, even the iOS, what is it, not 13, 15, iOS 15,
Mhm.
you can still get it to run on a iPhone 6S. I mean, that's
Yep,
mind-boggling.
it is. As a matter of fact, yesterday, because I like to keep all my devices, I don't give them away. Well, I shouldn't say I don't give them away. I pass it along down the family. And so my middle child daughter, she has the 5S. The 4S, I have a disassemble because I want to put them in a frame with all the components out and things like that. But she still have the 5S, and she uses the 5S. And just yesterday, there was an update. Granted, it's not the latest iOS 15 update, but it's still getting 12.5.5 updates
What?
to yeah, to do security updates and things like that. And I thought it was just fascinating to see, those things still happening.
Yeah, that's why these Android manufacturers needed to up their game, and it's very different when you can't control the economies of scale. Because
Got it.
Samsung is the closest thing that we ever got to an Android, well, not even Android manufacturer, but a smartphone device that that they control everything because they have a chipset. They actually
Right.
have their own operating system called Tizen. So
Oh,
their smart watches that they have are Tizen powered devices, and those
okay.
watches, just like the Apple ones, not the Apple watches per se, but how they handled the longevity of a device. I have a very old Samsung watch. One of them is the Samsung Gear S2 Classic, and
Okay.
it still looks beautiful, and the operating system is beautiful and modern. Um, the they launched Tizen powered smartphones to the India market, if I'm not mistaken, and other
Okay.
developing countries. It was several years ago. I don't want to pin it. It might have been like, I want to say at least, or maybe 5 6 years ago. Samsung had, and for those of you watching that might want to correct my history, can correct it. I'm just spitballing here. Samsung held a developers conference near Cupertino, and it scared the
Mm.
bejesus out of Google
Mm,
because Samsung was the largest manufacturer distributor of Android.
right.
But here was Samsung hosting their own developer conference because a lot of people complain about Samsung. Say, why do I have duplicate apps? I have the Google apps and then there's Samsung apps, because
Right.
Samsung has their own apps. They had their
Right.
own social media thing, kind of like a iMessage thing. I forget what they called the Samsung one specific, because
Mhm.
they had a sunset it, but they had a Samsung specific chat app, a social media thing.
Mm,
They had the Tizen OS, and they wanted developers to come to build for Tizen. So
right.
Google's like, oh my goodness, we're going to lose like 70% of our distribution channel here if Samsung
Mhm.
goes on separate ways. So Google did meet
Right.
with Samsung in private to keep Samsung to distribute Android. So
I
the
see.
Tizen smartphone experiment never came to the United States. I think it went the way of the dinosaur in a way, or Samsung put it in the back burner for now. But that was the closest we ever got to any competitor to Apple at that scale, where they're able to control all that. Because now
Interesting.
what we have with the Note devices, especially, um, I use what is called Your Phone. So Your Phone is a something that Microsoft developed that works
Mhm.
with Android devices, but
Mm,
it's mostly works with all the features on a Samsung device, and it's a seamless interaction wirelessly, with the phone and the computer, where you can drag and drop documents, pictures, videos between the two, like you're
mm,
actually dealing with the programs within your computer. You could take the calls, the messages, and all that. You can
right.
use the Android apps on your computer, like, and it's all seamless. And the
Right.
craziest part is this: to be able to copy and paste text while you're typing on your keyboard to the phone, and you have the
Mhm.
phone interface on the side. They've
Mhm.
been able to do that. So if you actually use a Samsung Galaxy Book, which is the Samsung's PC, Windows powered PC, you get even more things. So I'm like, I would have loved to have seen that, but Samsung's the closest we'll get to it. They're not what they used to be. But even
Yeah.
with all that being said, they are better than they used to be for their updates, but they only promise 2 to 3 years, and that's it.
Now let me
After
ask
that,
you
like,
this. So is that the same with Google directly, meaning Google still provides updates to older devices, or they don't do that?
well, Android itself is a open source software. So
Right.
anybody can go in and get it. So that's Google giving, because the Android is something they bought. Just like Chrome, they bought it. You said you use
Mhm.
Brave.
Mhm.
Anybody could build off it. So the actual foundation of the software gets updates. So like eventually there'll be like Android or whatever, 10, 11, 12, 13, and all that. I think we're
So it is
in
up
12
to the
now.
manufacturer then to follow up on that and provide those updates, is what you're
They
saying.
take Yeah, they'll take that and use the basis for it, and because they all build on top of it, they
Right.
take care of everything else. Security updates are very key because they got to come
Right.
through those channels.
Mhm.
And I just got an update thing on my Chromium, like right here. It's like, oh yeah, but that can wait. Because
Mhm.
the downside to that is if you have a heavily skinned operating system, like what
Right.
is Samsung UI, then
Uh-huh.
they have to touch up all of that to make it compatible with that operating system update. Otherwise,
Oh,
well, it's
okay.
stuck. But the security patches also important. They need to be rolled out. The issue still is that some of those things are still run through the carrier. So if there's carrier specific devices, they
Mhm.
have to run through the carrier. And if you're on Verizon or AT&T, you might be SOL. That's
Right.
why I buy my phones unlocked directly from the manufacturer,
Yeah,
because
likewise.
like Apple.
Yeah, likewise. I do the same thing. I mean, I think there's a various factor into what you just described. Number one, I think it is a huge incentive for carriers to not provide follow-up updates because eventually they want to make more money from the newer hardwares. So in a way, they kind of forcing you to jump onto the new devices wagon. And then
Mhm.
the other thing is might be the effort into supporting those older devices, into utilizing their own resources and not wanting to continue to support and invest in that instead of just focusing on the new thing. But yeah, but the reason why I asked you about Google specifically was, I'm not a big fan of monopoly, overall controlling everything.
Mhm.
But when it comes to, for instance, Apple or and now Google, and I think you touched on this earlier, that Samsung is also doing the same thing in terms of creating their own SoCs in-house. I think it just gives them the ability to fine tune whatever it is that they want to offer us as consumer in a much better environment. Whereas before, where you have to support 10,000 different manufacturers, things can get a little more, I don't know, chaotic, I guess, because back in the day when I was working for this company, I remember deploying Microsoft technology. I think I still have my Microsoft engineering certifications and all those things. And I remember when, it was Dell, HP, manufacturers. Then came Lenovo's. Then there was a few other aftermarket manufacturers coming in, and you had to support all these variations of hardwares that are thrown into this ecosystem. And then you have this plethora of software deployments that you need to put together, and it was just quite cumbersome. Whereas with Apple, when it came to deploying software updates, patches, and things like that, it was more feasible because they control, the operating system, the hardware, so the entire experience, it's, I guess, more easy and feasible for an everyday average person. For us that are more tech savvy or geeks, we don't care. We're in for, that thrill of, oh, new thing. Let me just work on this, troubleshoot it, see if it work. Oh, it fell. Oh man, let me just go complain on this group forum or whatever, and then see if I can come up with solution and then post it there. And so that is what Apple has done really, really good. So much so that if you are a part of that Apple ecosystem, things are just seamless. They just work. And if it doesn't work, you rarely, have to um, go too deep into the rabbit hole in terms of finding solutions, is what I'm trying to say. But I'm glad that Google is following on the same footsteps as well as, Samsung, I think, because in the end it'll give them more control of the products that they're putting out there, and thus competing at a better stage with, in this particular case, Apple.
Well, yes, there's a lot of good that comes of it, and the fact that it's open source software, I think, is what always, for those of us that like tinkering with things, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
we get the ability to, like, well, if we don't like it, we can still do our own thing.
Right.
Um, I
Yeah.
I recently published. In fact, in the week we're recording this, I published on my channel my daily tech for 2021, because this
Mm.
was the year that I've never had to replace as many devices as I did for this year.
Mm.
I tell people, the biggest insult I got this year was someone that called me an Apple fanboy. I'm like, you're new around here because I am not anything near an Apple fanboy. That argument from my side is starting to fall flatter now
Okay.
because of how much more Apple products I have since I was insulted. Because
Mm.
when I was shopping around for computers, that very thing that you mentioned, and I was really invested in the Microsoft Surface lineup.
Right.
Terrible experience with the Duo and the exchange process. That one is another rant coming for another day because it's not over yet. But
Okay.
the when it came to computers, I relied upon the Microsoft Surface Pro lineup, and I
Mm.
used that for years until
Mm.
I had to upgrade to something a lot more robust to a laptop. I ended up getting the laptop 3, which ended up passing on to my father in the company because I'm like, you need this more than I do. And then
Right.
I needed to see like, okay, I need a mobile, um, uh, I need a computer that can help me process, uh, like and content create on the go
Right.
that can do it right. And because I'm still rocking an Apple Watch, this is the Series 4.
Mhm.
This was the first watch that I actually kept on,
Likewise.
and I didn't care for iPhone. I didn't
Right.
like. I always wanted an iPod growing up, but I'm like, I didn't care for an iPhone. It's like, well, think
Okay.
about it. It's all it is an iPod with the cellular antenna in it, but it
Mhm.
just didn't. It didn't click on me. It's like, no, an iPod, an iPod. Well, when I was watching the presentation for this, like I had to play in the background because I didn't care. So when they announced the Apple Watch Series 4, I'm like, more of the same. Until they said EKG. I'm like, I'm
Right.
sorry, what? Because for me, in my health journey, that was
Mhm.
something key to me because I
Okay.
had heart rate monitors. I had wrist optical heart sensors they're not accurate, but if you're using something to track the inaccuracies, the
Right.
differences are still adding up to progress.
Mhm.
But the more important ones were the heart rate straps. So then I watched with interest when Apple made that announcement. So when reviewers that I trusted got their hands on it that do fitness and they're
Mhm.
testing the watch while using heart rate straps on another iPhone and comparing the results, it was mind boggling.
Interesting.
That's why I ended up getting it because I wanted to like streamline what I use. I don't want to have to, oh, I can't do my workout right now because I forgot my stuff at home or
Right.
I'm leaving work. So no, if I'm in a pinch, boom, I get to use this if I'm ready to go. I don't have an
Right.
excuse.
Right.
And the watch is, and those that know me and follow my channel know that I have to have a wearable. So coming from a Pebble, and I still use my Samsung watches because they work with iOS too, but I have connected to
Right.
my other Android. I carry 2 phones all the time. But this is the main one. I'm like, I think I'm gonna give this a shot. I gave it a shot. I never looked back.
Mm.
I got hooked on the watch, but in order to use it, I needed an iPhone. And I got the red XR. It's not the proper
Okay.
name, but I'm
Yeah.
saying XR.
Okay. Okay.
So I actually think that XR, by the way, was the last great red version they had because the red after that were like, these are not red.
It's weird. Yeah. It's a weird
Yeah,
red. Yeah.
yeah. And I wasn't a really big fan of the phone, but ironically, the interface when they got rid of the home button, it
Yeah.
operated a lot like the BlackBerry Playbook, which was a tablet they had,
Okay.
and then the latest BlackBerry operating system called BlackBerry 10, which was all gesture based. So when
Okay.
iPhone got rid of the home button, it was like, dude, this feels like a BlackBerry. Like what
And
the?
they got rid of Touch ID and went into Face ID. Yeah.
Yeah, so when they did that, I'm like, you know what? I can assimilate now because I really hated my first experience with an iPhone. I didn't even go 24 hours like sending this crap back.
I
But
see.
this thing, they got me. So that's why I opened myself up to like as I was looking at the price tiers for these computers for like Windows based, I'm like, what about a MacBook Pro?
Yeah.
That's what all the content creators use when they're on go. That's what they
Right.
rely upon.
Right.
And I looked into it and it came out a little cheaper. So I'm like, do I really want to go down this road to use a Mac like operating system? Because I didn't know how to really use one. But then I saw Boot Camp. I'm like, you
Yeah.
mean I could transform the hardware into a Windows computer? That didn't look back. So that's why I'm like, I took a picture of a MacBook Pro. And like, everybody on it, you got an Apple computer? It's like, let me explain. So I took the
Right.
next picture and I showed Windows booting up. It's like, how did you do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Boot
Yeah.
camp.
Yeah.
So that's when like, okay, so I can use my Windows stuff. So I do use I'm like 70% of the time I'm in Windows on that one.
Got it.
And
And the
then the
beauty,
rest
the
go
beauty
ahead.
of that is, and what I appreciate this company doing is that obviously Bootcamp is nothing new, right? We know Bootcamp has been out for, oh my goodness, decades now. But the ability to cross platform into in a specific environment such as the macOS Unix based, and then coexist with Microsoft operating system, I think it's a good thing because it adds value to everyone. Like you just described, it added more value to what you do. And on top of that, excuse me, if there's anything else that you need to experiment or do on the Mac side, well, you have that choice there. And I think that's where I see the trend with Microsoft as well. I think after the new CEO, I always get his name horribly wrong. The new Microsoft CEO. Do you remember his name? Um, so, anyways, I have seen the trend where um, he's integrating all this Microsoft technology into being more cohesive with whether if it's Android or Apple, and that has propelled Microsoft and put Microsoft in a different level where more people are adopting a lot more Microsoft technology into the Apple ecosystem and vice versa. I mean, just the fact that Apple announced this year that they will be supporting iMessages for Android devices was a huge thing for a
Mhm.
lot of people, especially those with Android devices. As we know, there is this rivalry between the blue bubble and the green bubble when you're messaging one another, and so having the ability now to go cross platform like that and do even FaceTime with Android users, it's a welcome feature. And I think that all these companies should continue to invest and promote that time of cohesive, multi-platform environment. I think it's it's just going to add more value to whatever the company, doing that might be.
Yeah, it definitely opens them up to a wider consumer base, either
Exactly.
side. So there's definitely pluses to that because I did hate a walled garden because yeah, I carry I'm using the iPhone 12, and for those that seen my daily tech video, it wasn't intentional that I went everything white and silver this year because even my Note 20 is the same thing, and it just everything.
It matches your
Like
heft, so it's cool.
it match. Yes, yes, that was an and here's the thing, these are the Surface, headphones, the first generation. They work
Okay.
great with my Windows-based computer. They were
Right.
not playing nice, though, with the MacBook Pro. I'm like, "Well, it's just
I'm
Bluetooth.
sure.
Why is it so choppy?" Like, it would drop, like, it would be staticky, and then it would
Mm,
just drop audio, like, every 15 seconds. Like, "Oh, this is terrible. I can't edit like this."
mm.
So I bit the bullet because I was already shopping around for headphones. I'm like, I didn't see this coming, but I should have. I ended up getting just a few days ago the AirPods Max. So that was I haven't announced that one yet. So if anybody's seen it there, I'm announcing it now. And I
Okay.
made the mistake in getting them in space gray because in the picture they
Oh,
look
that's not a
black.
mistake. Come on, that's not a mistake. It
No,
looks
but I
great.
thought well, it didn't look great when I put it down on my silver a Mac. I'm like, it just
Right.
doesn't flow. So I
Yeah.
went to go exchange for the silver one. I'm like, oh, that is nicer.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I
So
ended
you
up,
wanted to match. Yeah.
it felt really out of place. And I don't care because I have black headphones, but
Right.
it didn't mesh well.
I
Um,
see.
and it's like, okay, I have two stations anyway. One's on the go, and I'm like, okay, now something to really do my content creation with, and I was so like I can focus in on my audio editing, especially the video part is visual, but the
Right.
audio experience, if there's any lag in it, that's where it really sucks because you could clip the video like, oh, I got the clip. Yeah, but because you're using Bluetooth headphones,
Right.
your audio was off by just that much, and now the rest of the video looks out of sync.
Yeah. If
That
there's one advice that we should give, your viewers and the people listening is that if you are creating content, make sure not to think that your Bluetooth headphones, whether if it's your regular AirPods or your AirPods Pro, or even any Bluetooth based headphones, are going to be the best for you to edit. Now, I understand if you are in a rush and it's a small edit, I can, see how that might work. But from my own personal experience, it is such a bad way to edit because your mouth will be moving at a different speed than your audio, and it's just gonna be hilarious unless you're going for that as a, maybe you're doing comic or what. But yeah, a wired headphone for editing is a most. So
Yeah, that's why my Audio Technicas are my go-to. I've used that. Man, those are old, but they're my go-to. There's studio headphones. Like I can't replace them at all. I only use it when or like I only use any Bluetooth stuff just when I'm hearing the playback and I'm just like wandering about doing other things and I could hear it. Like, okay, I need to make some changes there. And look at the timestamps, and it's sometimes like give or take a few because of course I'm using Bluetooth, so then I
right,
would do those edits. But
I
yeah,
see.
I do not rely on Bluetooth. The experience is a bit different with
Yeah,
the Air Max pods, the AirPods Max, that is, because of I don't know how the heck they really sync those things up. But those things are hardcore.
I decided not to use the AirPods Max for edit, and instead I went with this type of headphones.
Mhm.
And there's a reason for that as well. I'm not a big fan of the AirPods Max, even though I love Apple Tech and everything Apple Tech. Some of the reason, obviously, was the number one thing. I thought the price isn't reasonable. I mean, just
Mhm.
like pretty much everything Apple. But I think on the AirPods, the AirPods Max, I think they went above and beyond. And I understand there are solid aluminum, and I mean, right now I do use it to watch when I enjoy some Apple TV Plus, series or what have you, just because of the spatial audio feature, the emulation of
Mhm.
surround that they have, incorporated from Dolby, I think it is. And I think it's phenomenal. That technology is incredible, but I don't think it justifies the cost for the headphone. Now, the biggest pet peeve that I have with the AirPods Max is the case. I
No.
cannot emphasize how close to a purse those things look, which is why my wife is the one using them on a regular basis. And
There's a whole aftermarket for that. Like, oh, here, buy these, like $30.
yeah,
Like, oh, that looks pretty good.
yeah,
So I do have an eye on a case that I want to get for. I just got these things. You
yeah,
know
yeah,
what? Maybe I could reach it. Let me see over here.
yeah.
It's like right next to me.
Yeah, I would say that's the only thing. Obviously, people have different preferences. I know that the noise canceling is really, really good. They're having, a lot of raving reviews about it.
Yeah. So this is the purse he's talking about.
Yeah. There it is.
Yeah. Uh, but
And the other thing is
these.
at the bottom of it, at the bottom of it, that's the only way to put the headphones into sleep mode, right? There is no on and off button for those headphones. So oftentimes you need to be cautious, because if you leave them laying on your desk or, anything like that, let's say like the Sony XMs 4, the most recent one, MX or XMs, I forgot which brand, which model they are. Those will auto turned off eventually after, let's say, a minute or two or what have you, to preserve the battery. And I think that's something that Apple thought of, but they didn't execute on this particular AirPods Max, because the fact that they have to be seated in this case in order to put them to sleep is an extra step that not everyone is going to do, let alone that the case doesn't protect the headphone itself from tapping on the corners to each other, and
Yeah.
thus, possibly in the future creating small scratches and dents. Even though it's solid aluminum, these things are heavy. They feel very, very solid. I just think that the protection should have been, better than what it is. Now, the one thing that I tried a while back with those, when I was editing a short clip, was buying the extra overpriced audio cable from Apple, and just using that hardwired on my Mac via the headphone, and it did, work better than using the Bluetooth.
Well, is that like um, is that like a USB Type C to Lightning? Is
Correct.
that it? Because okay, yeah, no, I'm sure there's some aftermarket ones that are much cheaper.
Oh, for sure. No question about it. But you know how they do things. Sometimes they tie it so well with that particular device that oftentimes you get different experience or glitches here and there. That if something were to
Yeah.
happen to the device itself, that they're going to blame that particular aftermarket, cable, as opposed to their device itself. But anyways,
Yeah.
most companies do that regardless.
Yeah, but that's also why Apple is just so reluctant to give up the Lightning port on iPhones. I'm like, dude, you
Oh
went
my goodness.
USB Type C on everything but this one.
Oh Lord. Don't get me started with that, man.
Right?
It's crazy. Absolutely bananas to see that every other device iteration, whether if it's the iPad Pro now, as well as the MacBooks lineup, um, and let's see what else. Even the new Apple Watch Series 6, the cable, the fast charging cable that they have is USB-C. And so it just tells you how tightly they have, this lightning control over it, instead of just embracing what everyone else have done for many years now, and that is adopting USB-C. I mean, there's just no way around that. And I think there has been some lawsuits in Europe in for Apple standardizing all their devices to use USB-C
I
as
remember
opposed to
that.
Lightning. Yeah.
Yeah, that might affect it, but Apple, I think the response from Apple was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna just ditch all the ports. Like what? So
Yeah, exactly.
it's either one extreme or the other, Lightning port or
Yeah,
nothing. Like, oh
yeah,
my
yeah, yeah, yeah.
goodness,
And I can see
dude.
that happening in the next, 2 more iterations where they try to just go MagSafe 100%. I
Mhm.
mean, we'll see the trend going for that. The new MacBook, which is what I'm using currently right now, the new MagSafe tech is better. The one that they introduced on the iMacs 24-inch, the new ones this year, have a new MagSafe tech. So you can see that they actually are transitioning. So I can see a future within the next 2 years or so where they're going to be pushing iPhones without any ports at all. That it was just going to be Qi technology for charging these devices.
Yeah, I quite honestly don't use the lightning cable. I don't carry it with me. So
Oh, really?
I actually treat my iPhone like a portless device because I have
Hmm,
wireless chargers in the office and at home. I just
good.
plop it on there, and when I
Right.
transfer content from the phone over to the MacBook Pro, I'm like I AirDrop it. I'm like,
Right.
dude, that's fast. So I'm like, okay, it just I don't have to like fumble with cables, and
Right.
I do find that super convenient. Um,
Yeah.
but
AirDrop is a tech that I think has been underrated for a long, long time. And um, people that are new to Apple ecosystem, the moment they either see someone else doing it or they do it themselves and see how feasible it is to just AirDrop practically anything from your mobile device to a Mac and vice versa, it's just mind blowing, in my opinion.
yeah, that's why Samsung and Google are trying their own thing at that. It's called they were trying. It was first called Android Beam, I think. They're bringing
Interesting.
it back. Samsung is doing their own thing. They call it Quick Share. Right now, it only works with Samsung Android devices. That it
Mhm.
literally mimics AirDrop.
Good.
So it's the next generation of what Android Beam used to be, because that's what it
Mm,
used to be, Android to Android, where they can just pass things on. There's this. I'm a big fan of sci-fi, and one of
okay.
the best science fiction works that I've seen was it's not over yet. It's called The Expanse on it's on Prime. It's on Amazon. It's about as of this recording, the it's going to enter the third uh
Season.
season. Yeah, I mean a sixth season. So hold on, I'm
Oh
getting a
wow, sixth season. My goodness.
yeah, I'm getting a waiting on from somebody in the chat. Hold on, I don't know why. I
Waiting.
didn't send. Yeah, I didn't. Um, a kick from studio. Yeah, I don't
You mean
know who
someone that
this.
wants to join the chat?
Yeah, I don't know why I trying to join the chat because we're doing this privately.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I'm gonna. What's good? Kick from studio. If you want to prevent people from rejoining you, you should ban them instead. Okay, we're in record only, so I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, it's cool as long as that they don't, join in or do anything that they're not supposed to. I guess we can just keep
Hmm.
moving, pushing this forward. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I think that um, it is what works best for each of us or each individual. If you are in the Android ecosystem, and this used to be the battles that we used to have constantly, no, Android is better or Apple is better. And look, we have this technology, this feature for the past 5 years, and now you guys just got it and you think you got the greatest and everything. Um, and again, at this point, I just think is whatever works for you, just use that. If you're happy with your Android ecosystem, then by all means continue to do that. And for those of us that are in the Apple ecosystem, then we just need to keep it down a little bit and respect the other people's opinion when it comes to criticizing Apple for whatever it is. I used to be a big Apple fan and believer and things like that, and for the past 5 years or so, as I saw a lot of lack of innovation coming out from Apple and then seeing the other companies innovating so rapidly, I started realizing that the perception that Apple was putting out there wasn't the best moving forward. And so I began to question some of those things and um, began a little more on the middle road as opposed to just taking one side over the other, as well as even with Microsoft as well. And right now, I'm just, it's whatever makes you happy. Sometimes I have conversation with my family members, and some of them will be, I'm just happy with my Samsung Galaxy. I think it's on the 20 or 21 series or something like that.
Um, it's yeah, 21, the S21.
Okay. And the camera is better and this and that because we always default to the camera conversation. And obviously, there's a reason for that. We use the camera probably the most on these devices, especially with social media. And again, if you're happy with that, are you very well versed into the videography and photography environment as to um, understand how many pixels you will need to, or to record a 4K or 8K video that I know some of those Samsung devices are capable of, and what are you going to do with that in the first place? It's good to have, but at the end of the day, whether you post it on any of the social media or even YouTube, everything gets compressed. So
Yeah.
regardless of having a camera that has 48 megapixels and you're recording 8K footage, it's cool. So, be happy. If that's what you want, then great. I'm, again, I have used iPhones recording all the way back from 6X plus, I think it was. That's when I started making videos for YouTube and things like that. And I was, you know, fine, fine with it. I have
Mm.
no issue whatsoever. And now, obviously, the iPhones starting from the 11 and the 12 and now the 13. The 13, I'm reserving, a lot of criticisms from Apple on the 13, but I would say from the 11 to the 12, it was a great bumped into the hardware iteration. On the 13, not so much, which is why I skipped it. And
Mm.
I made an entire podcast episode criticizing Apple for the iPhone 13 and the lack of, innovation on that particular one. Because at the end of the day, the overwhelming majority of iPhone users do not care one bit about cinematic mode or any of these basic things that were introduced on the iPhone 13. And so I didn't see the need for me to move from my 12 Pro Max to the 13 uh, Max. And so we'll see what they come up with next year. Hopefully something that it's is better, and maybe I'll jump on that wagon. But for the time being, I'm very happy with the 12 Pro Max, and it's brand new. So
Yeah, and I have to admit, I really like the hardware of the 12 Pro. I have the 12 Pro, not the Max, because I hate big phones. But I ended up
okay.
getting a Note 20, which is even bigger than the
I know.
Pro Max. Like, what the? That is enormous. Um, but credit to where credit's due. I never complain about the hardware on Apple.
Mhm.
I only
Okay.
complain about the operating system all across the board.
Oh, okay.
When I first got an iPad, I'm like, why are they wasting the real estate space of a giant screen? Why do they have to use and scale up in iOS like
Right.
like layout to take advantage of the screen? So eventually they brought iPad OS, but even that didn't have everything. You're like, okay, some widgets, but no mouse support and things like that.
Yeah.
So it was slow getting the ball rolling in that respect, and I still don't like iOS. I think it's
Mm.
cumbersome compared to how I navigate myself on Android. It's just,
Okay.
and being able to transfer data to and from a computer is significantly better on an Android, especially when you can go to the root files and just move things around. So that's something easier for me to do. But there was a train of thought that I had that I got interrupted because and we're recording this, but it's still, it would have, like, if it's a live broadcast,
Hmm.
i'm gonna I'm gonna report to StreamYard that incident that just happened just now, where someone that should not have had the link to this stream ended up trying to join the thing. Now, they didn't try anything malicious, but they were communicating right there in the private chat. Like, but how? This is a record only, and I handed you the link. So
Right.
that interrupted my mind, my train of thought with what I was talking
Okay.
about in terms of the Expanse, which is entering season 6. Reason I bring it up is because of all the science fiction movies, I can think of probably like 2001: A Space Odyssey, and then Minority Report. Those two movies were revolutionary in their technology, but also kind of predicted a realistic portrayal of future tech, which
Hmm.
is outstanding.
Hmm.
Particularly the Minority Report thing and pre-crime and all that.
Right.
But like Identiscan and all that. A TV show In this case, The Expanse, which was on the Sci-Fi Channel for 3 seasons before it was canceled and picked up by Amazon Studios. That's why it's on Prime now. All of it.
Mm.
There is this really. It takes place like 200 years in the future. We colonize Mars, and we have different space stations throughout the asteroid belts. I
Mm.
love the technology that is used in it because the phones that the characters used, they call it a terminal. They don't call them phones anymore. And I'm
Okay.
like, well, that's pretty much true. And they call it a terminal because it's basically your universal pass. So let's say I'm using this as a prop here.
Mhm.
Only the bottom section is like a place where you can hold it with your hand, and the rest of it is like a piece of glass or plastic. So it's all translucent,
Right.
and it's a screen that you interact with for everything that you do. So if you're going to a room, you're going to unlock it. You're unlocking it with the phone, like NFC. And when you enter a room, there's already like docks and things that you can dock it and then expand the screen to like a holographic thing, or toss it to the TV so you can see it in high def. I'm like,
Mm.
that makes a lot of sense. And when
Mm.
you're using your ID, it's the phone, everything, because that's what these things are. These Swiss Army knives of so many different things.
Right.
And it was a logical leap in technology that wherever you went, the terminal was the only way for you to basically communicate with anything there. And it made sense because a lot of it's you can do gesture based, you can still type on it, but also recognizing voice patterns and speech recognition for what you're asking when you're asking it, like a
Mm.
very smart voice intelligence system. But get this, but no voice feedback to you. It was
Mm.
just showing you the results, but it wasn't telling you anything. I thought that is brilliant, especially because one of the characters in the show has one and has a cracked screen. I'm like, well, that's very realistic.
Yeah.
But when I saw that, I'm like, that's what I wish for technology. I know that Apple's doing that with like their AirDrop into like if you have a
Mhm.
HomePod, an Apple TV, you have your MacBook or your Mac or like an iMac,
Mhm.
your phone, your tablet, your watch. If you have them all in Wi-Fi, you're tossing the phone call through all of it. You can message through all of it.
Right.
I think you can switch the music from one to another. It's a very similar concept, and they're able to do that because they control the economies of scale. I know Android to an extent wants to be able to do that, or at least Google wants to be able to do that through their acquiring Nest, and like Android itself being able to communicate through casting to all these different things. So yes, it makes sense. And 200 years later, that is the pinnacle still of how things communicate. Our phones are very, very important.
Of
So
course.
while sometimes Apple seems to be late to the game on things, because it's always a running joke. Oh, look, Apple finally invented wireless charging. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Well, the difference is though that when Apple does it, the industry moves with them. So they
That's
let
right.
someone else pioneer it, and then they come along and do it better. So I do know all eyes are on Apple to see what they would do with a foldable phone or
Yeah.
their take on a Tesla, because
Mhm.
that would be interesting to see how that all
Yep.
works.
I don't know if you have ever heard this, but Elon actually reached out to Apple a while back to buy Tesla when they were going to go bankrupt, and they declined. So
Mm.
imagine Apple back then accepting that offer to own Tesla today. I mean, incredible.
Oh, but that's
Just
true, huh?
just incredible.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
especially with all the, I mean, most people see Tesla as a car manufacturer and things like that, but Tesla technically is a technology and robotics company. They're not a car company. And so it is fascinating to see how software is so intricate that it has gone all the way across all these different nuances of our lives. And in this case, a car. And the ability to be able to unlock your car, start your car from your iPhone. I don't know if the Android app for Tesla does it or not. I'm not
No, I
familiar.
think it's Apple. I think it's Apple.
Okay, you're able to, fire it up from there via Bluetooth. It's just incredible to see things like that happening in our lifetime, and see what's coming down the pipe as well, in regards to those integrations across multiple companies. And again, I love that. I love that ability to be able to do that. I mean, the reality is our iPhones are so powerful than most computers nowadays, quite frankly. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
I read something a while back that the iPhones are, I don't know how many times faster than the initial Apollo computers that we sent to space back then, and even today. And so we don't realize that because we're just focused on what we see, in front of us, a larger screen and the feedback that we're getting from that device. But underneath all that stuff, the CPU, the memory, and everything else is just incredible. The power that this device is packed in such a small, you know, form factor.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a Swiss Army knife of so many things. Um, and there's a, oh my goodness, what is that thing? Someone else is trying to do what Apple's doing. I think it's BMW is trying to mimic that ability to have the car key on your phone, just like
Mhm.
you can with the Tesla. And it's
Right.
logical because BMW has their own electric vehicles too. I know that Audi's working on something to that extent as well. It's just there's just a lot, and
Right.
I like that. It's very convenient, because when tech works for us and with us, it definitely helps us improve the quality of life.
Oh, for
And of course,
sure.
there's always that dark side because of like, well, how do they get all that info to make it convenient? It's like, well, because we are the batteries to that machine. We are the data, you
Yeah,
know.
in reality, and I don't know if you want to segue into what you were talking about, big tech or social media and things like that right now, but
Oh, oh
you
yeah, I'd love to talk about that. We can, you know what? For those of you watching on YouTube, we're gonna take on big tech. For those of you that are not watching on YouTube, you'll be able to uh, watch the rest of this interview. But follow the descriptions down below. There'll be links to see the full interview, particularly the segment that you're going to miss out on. So, for those of you, particularly on YouTube, this is what we bid you adieu. If you want to see the rest of my conversation with Sam as we talk about big tech and how America looks from that side of the ocean, because he's out in Taiwan, we're both very politically inclined and agree with we see eye to eye on a lot of things, but what does America look like from the other side? The answers to those questions and discussions and more, you can go check that out. You can find the links over the show notes at www.segovia.com. So for the rest of you, we'll see you later. Thanks for being on here, Sam.
thank you.